This is Gina Moore with More Than Sports. I am here with former Oregon State running back and current Koin 6 sports reporter and analyst, Marcus Greaves. Marcus, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this.
Yeah.
I even took a nap. I'm feeling good now. I'm well rested. I'm ready to do this.
Well, perfect.
Yeah, let's do
Let's
it.
get started. So you grew up in Prineville, Oregon, which for those of you that don't know is Central Oregon. What was it like growing up? So I'm from Junction City, which our town had about 3,500 people.
Yeah.
Prineville had about how many when you were there?
I would say about 9,000.
Okay. So what
Yeah.
was that like kind of living in a small town?
It was interesting. It was definitely different. My family, we moved from the East Coast, so at a young age, so I kind of got put into a different situation. And let me tell you, not only was it weird and was it crazy, but it was actually surprisingly a good time. And that was something that it helped me definitely develop into a person that I am today. It kind of moved my perspective away from what I was used to, and then gave me a whole nother perspective. So after spending most of my childhood there, and I went to high school there and everything like that, it was it was weird, like I said, but at the end of the day, I look back and I have some of my best friends still live in Prineville. Some really important people in my life live in Prineville still, and again, I probably wouldn't be the man I am today without those people in Prineville. So as much as the small town was interesting, and I was kind of I was the only African American kid, me and my brother. But besides that, like we had a solid support group, and they made it enjoyable for us.
Good. Now you said that you kind of gained a different perspective. What perspective was that?
Well, I saw a horse for the first time in my life, and I thought horses were fake. So when I saw a horse, I was like, "Whoa!" I was like, "What is that thing?" But and just in general, like seeing a whole different, landscape. My family is originally from the city. A lot of my family lives in New York and things like that. So that's kind of what we were used to, what we saw, and then to move to a place where there was people walking down the street, on horses and cowboy hats. I was like, man, I'm not sure this is for me, but I'll find a way to make it work. But and just a different perspective is in seeing how other people live and seeing how other people kind of like what's important to them. Kind of you get lost in the city lifestyle, right? When you're in the big lights and the flashing lights all the time, and then you get a move to a place like Prineville where there's none of that, right? Now everything is just you have a lot of time on your hands and there's not a lot to do. So that was probably where I gained the most perspective, was just the fact that there wasn't really anything else to do. So I had to venture out and figure out things I like, mindset I wanted to have, and things like that.
So did you ever buy a cowboy hat or ride a horse?
No. So that's the thing. There was a new perspective. I'm not saying I gave all the new perspectives and I tried everything. I tried I went fishing. I like fishing. But yeah, the cowboy hat, the horses, that's still not for me to this day. So I went about 14 years strong without riding a horse or anything like that from when I first saw it, 15 years, and it's probably gonna stay that way.
You're missing out. It's fun. Now I grew up in Junction City, but I didn't own horses, so I wasn't like the true country girl.
Yeah.
So you went to Crook County High School.
hmm
You were team captain. You played all 3 years or 3 years varsity. Is that correct?
All 4 years varsity. Yeah.
Okay.
I know it's hard to dig up a little bit of the info, especially in time.
So you were team captain your senior year. What qualities did you possess to really earn that? Was that voted on by your teammates or was your coaches? How did you earn that?
So the thing for me is I kind of hit a point where growing up, my mom, single mom, she really preached from the get-go, is like, you work hard, people are gonna respect what you do, things like that, the talking and everything. Trying to be that loudmouth kind of player was something she didn't like. And that was something that growing up I always was. I won't lie to you guys. So I was definitely kind of the guy who was, more of the smack talker, always in people's faces, kind of, strutting a little bit, I would say. But eventually I hit a point when I was a freshman where I was like, okay, like, if I want to take this football thing serious, or at the time it was basketball as well, trying to decide which one I want to go play in college, I was like, well, I'm going to have the right mindset. And I'm going to have to not only gain the respect that I feel like I deserve for myself, but gain the respect from others and my teammates, my peers, and opposing players and coaches. So I thought the thing that kind of separated me, especially to be a team captain, was the fact of how much hard work that I wanted to put in. So I was kind of the guy that I would say after practice to do the extra work, because don't get me wrong, as much as I didn't want to do it, I knew it was going to pay off in the long run. And things like trying to be the first one, at the football field, first one in the gym for basketball, first one for weights. Like I said, I would always try and be the first one in, last one out. That was kind of, I watched a lot of Kobe Bryant videos when I was little on YouTube. So just seeing kind of how he worked and his work ethic was something that I was like, okay, if that's how Kobe Bryant does it, Kobe Bryant's one of the greatest athletes of all time. I have to follow in those footsteps. And, seeing my mom kind of have the background she did, and then, raising two kids at the age of, 19, and then having to work her way into now being a doctor. And now, obviously she's living the good life. So kind of seeing how things progressed with her, how she worked hard, it really inspired me. And like I said, on top of the Kobe Bryant stuff, that's kind of what pushed me to have that mentality and earn that respect from the guys. Is that I was like, okay, there's one thing I need to know, is that regardless of whatever happens or anything of where I'm going to go or anything like that, I need to make sure that people know that if there's one thing about me, is that you could never say that I did not do something that I'm asking someone else to do. So Michael Jordan kind of said that, and I really took that to heart. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to make sure if I'm telling other guys to work hard and be the best player that they can be, then I have to make sure I'm doing the same for myself, because if not, I'm not going to gain the respect. And then from there, as a leader, they wouldn't want to follow me.
Mm-hmm. So you led by example, and it sounds like your mom was, pretty amazing example for you as well. So that's awesome, and great for her. She's a doctor now, like you said.
Yeah.
And, I mean, raising two kids as a single mom, that's phenomenal. So kudos to your mom.
Trust me. I like to think that I work hard, and I'm kind of a hustler in the instance of, like, I'll stay up all night to work, and grind and things like that. But every time we start going toe to toe, I was like, man, I can't compete with her. She's got it. So I'll stay second place behind her. But yeah, she's got me beat in the long run for a long time.
That's good. That's your mom, so she deserves that respect for sure.
Absolutely.
So how many colleges recruited you?
So I had a solid handful: Washington, Oregon State, any local Oregon one you can think of. I had a little bit of Cal interest. Mostly, basically, easiest way to say is all the Pac-12 schools aside from USC, Stanford, and UCLA. So I got interest from a lot of those guys. It was really tough being, playing 4A in Oregon, where you don't get a lot of, Central Oregon isn't the hot spot, you know what I'm saying, for recruiting. So when guys would come out, I would have to understand, okay, if these coaches are going to come all the way out here, I better do something good, because they probably weren't never going to come out here again. And so a lot of the interest I got was preferred walk-on, because, level of competition, they were like, okay, we know you're a good athlete, but, are you that great of an athlete, or are you going up against a competition that you're just that much better than? So it was, I would say my highlight film actually kind of hurt me more than it helped me, which obviously, as you would know, Gina, it's that should never be the case, but what it was, to be honest. So it was a different experience. My recruiting trail and my recruiting path was a lot different than everybody else's. But just in general, those were probably the top schools that really reached out to me, were interested, and eventually I ended up going to Oregon State in the long run. But yeah, the path to get there was quite the rough one.
So why did you ultimately choose Oregon State?
So Coach Riley and this is something where I grew up, and anyone who knew me, like, I didn't know football until obviously my family got to Oregon, but football for me was like, I fell in love with it like as soon as I figured out like what it was all about. My mom took me to a Ducks game when I was little, and Dennis Dixon. I actually still have it here. I have my Dennis Dixon uh, college football jersey. He signed it for me and everything. I was like, I was like a sixth grader or something like that. And he signed it, and I was like, man, like football is so cool. Like I want to be a quarterback. I want to be the next Dennis Dixon. Like I want to be all of this. And so, I grow up loving Oregon football, everything they were about. I watched them all the time. I remember always watching film on, the Michael James, Kenyon Varner, D'Anthony Thomas, these guys, because I was like, these are the players I want to be like if I'm going to be eventually, obviously, like I moved to running back. But then that's when I started looking at those guys saying, okay, this is what I need to do. I want to, have their run style. I was on YouTube watching their videos all the time, like just trying to see, their touchdown celebrations. I want to do everything like them. But in the long run, once Oregon started showing some serious interest in me, I had a couple times where, at first I was like, oh, that's easy. If they, regardless if it was a preferred walk-on full scholarship, I'm going to Oregon because that's kind of been my dream. But then I kind of took a step back and I was like, okay, so they already have a solid running back group, which competition is never something, I'll run away from. And that's why I was kind of pushing it. I was like, oh, well, I'll still go to Oregon. Thomas Tyner's going to Oregon. I would love to compete against that. Just a room full of really good running backs is what I want to go up against. But in the long run, once I met Coach Riley, it was like the easiest decision I ever made, which is crazy because, going to college and figuring out what college you want to go to is probably a lot of these kids' hardest decision. But I checked out all these other schools. It was everything I kind of wanted. But then I go and I met Coach Riley, and like I just sat down with him and talked with him, and I was like, this is the easiest choice I could ever make. Just how he approached me, how he talked to me was a lot different than almost everybody else. He gave me he talked to me like he wanted me to be more than just a football player, and he knew I was a talented football player. He was like, we could use you, and everyone else could use you for so much more than just being a football player. So to this day, Coach Riley is hands down my favorite coach. He's a guy that, most of the time when you see these college coaches later on, once you're done playing football, some of them will remember you if you're, a big player, if you're the Jaquiz Rogers or you're the Sean Mannings, they'll remember you. Me again, I thought I had a great career at Oregon State for what I did. I had to fill a role as, being I just had to be a special teams dog. I wasn't the star running back or anything like that. My career was built on hard work, and Coach Riley, I got to be with him for the first two seasons. And once I saw him, I was like, "Hoo-wee!" Like, I saw him even I think it was last year I saw him, and I was like, I'm not sure if he'll even remember me. I was walking by and he looked at me. He was like, "Marcus, no way!" Gave me a hug. He sat down and talked with me for 30, 40 minutes. He was like, "Man, tell me about life. How's your family? What do you do now? Is there anything I can do to help you out?" Just that's who he is as a guy. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but just in general, that Coach Riley was the main reason why I went to Oregon State. To this day, regardless of whatever happened in my career, if it didn't go as I thought, I didn't make it to the NFL. I thought I made the right decision, and if I can go back, I'd make that same decision 10 out of 10 times because Coach Riley, I think, kind of just elevated me as a person.
See, and I think that's it's great because when you do feel comfortable, sometimes I think it is just that.
Yeah.
It's just you feel at home, and so that's pretty phenomenal. And I knew Coach Riley's a great coach, so really couldn't go wrong. I live in Eugene now, so I'm a Duck fan, but I have a lot of high school kids that I've interviewed that are going to OSU, so I'm gonna have to get some gear, I guess.
Yeah, hey, you need the gear, you just let me know. I got too much of it. I'm trying to get rid of it.
All right. I might pick you up on that. So your career, like you said, at OSU didn't necessarily go as planned. You didn't make it to the NFL. You battled with injuries. You ultimately had to quit playing football because of injuries. Talk to me a little bit about how that was for you, playing football for as long as you did, and then not being able to play anymore. And, especially if your dream is the NFL. Talk to me a little bit about your mindset and how you kind of got over that. And, we'll talk about what you're doing now, but, how was that for you?
Yeah, so I won't lie. It was probably one of the hardest things I've had to experience because growing up, what's your one goal if you play football is you want to go to the NFL. Growing up being a star player for your team, being, one of the top recruited guys in the state of Oregon. Just, you feed into the hype a little bit, I want to say. And it's always, you go through your high school career, you're like, man, okay, now your one goal is I want to go to college. I want to go to college and play football. All right, then you get that. You get to college football. Then you think it's going to be, what it is. I was one of the only guys who got to play as much as I did, with not being a scholarship athlete at first, and so that's kind of, it was me and one other guy, and I started on all the special teams. I got in a running back plenty of times. I had no crazy games where I rushed for 250 yards or anything like that. But then, one day in spring practice, after I started throughout my career on special teams, got my good reps in at running back. We were doing just a normal speed and space. It's, running backs try and, break a tackle for or juke out a defender. And I did the exact same move for the past 10 years when I played football. It was nothing crazy, just made a plant. And then my other ACL popped. So I had my first one a couple years before that. So in my left knee, then this one was my right knee. So that was ultimately the last kind of moment that I had with football, which is tough for a lot of people because you think of your last moment of playing football is you want to go out on a good game, maybe you win a bowl game, you win a national title, or you at least get to play. But that happened in the springtime, the season after we beat Oregon in 2016. So my last football play ever, which is hard to swallow to this day, is my last football play ever was tearing my ACL, and then it was just like this. It's done. So it was definitely tough. My mindset at first. Once I went through the first one is kind of, that's where you're like, okay, you're really motivated. You're like, all right, let's get back to it. We'll be fine. You still got a couple of seasons left to play. Climb our way back. Let's get back into this thing, and let's earn your starting spots back, which is exactly what I did. And then after that, to just have it happen again, the mindset was completely different the second time around. I won't lie. I was really upset because I knew it was going to be the end. And it was in a matter of, I think, 30 minutes where I figured out I probably wasn't going to play anymore. So I tore the ACL. The trainer came over. He helped me throughout my first one. He was like, man, like, what's wrong? I remember I tried to run it off like as quickly as I could. I tear it. I didn't fall on the ground or nothing. I jogged. I remember I started crying as soon as I did it because I knew exactly what happened. But I was talking to myself saying, "Come on, man! Like just keep running, you'll be fine. Just run it off." And then I ran down the field to the next drill where everyone was. And I'm jogging down the field, and I already knew it was too hard. It was too unstable, and it was probably the saddest 50-yard jog of my life. But I made it down there. I tried to do 3 plays in the drill, and my coach was like, Breeze, what's wrong? I was like, man, like, I don't know. And then the trainer, like I said, trainer came over. He kind of did the little ACL test that they can tell if your knee is loose or not. And yeah, man, he was like, sorry, it looks like it's torn. So the worst part about it is that he knew how upset I would be. So he did it, and he didn't say anything at first. And he was like looking down at my knee, and I knew he didn't want to look me in the eye because he knew, what it was. And so, like I said, went to the doctor's office after that. Left the practice field, went over there, did some quick scans, and in a matter of 10 minutes, he was like, "Yeah, man, like your ACL's tore. That's probably the last of football you can play because just the recovery time and things like that will be too long." So I walk into practice thinking, here's another day of good practice. I'm excited for it. I was fighting for those second team reps with Artavis Pierce and stuff like that, and then just to have it kind of be taken away. It was tough. And then, like I said, the second time around, your mentality is different. Now I was like, why did this happen to me? What did I do wrong? How did my career end like this from what it was? Because, it was built up on a lot of hype, a lot of hard work. I finally got to like that last season of, okay, this is it. If you're going to make it to the league, things were panning out, getting a lot more carries or running back, starting kickoff return man. Like there was just a lot of things that were rolling my way. And then just to have it be taken away, it was tough. And I remember waking up at, I'd still wake up at 4:30 once I was done playing football and wasn't a part of the team anymore because I had to retire. I still woke up at 4:30. I would just sit there like, man, like I don't know what to do. I'd wake up at 4, like I said, at 4:30 in the morning, sit on the edge of my bed and cry a little bit. But that's kind of, those were kind of the dark times. But then I met Evanson Bernard. He, for those of you who don't know Evanson, he was a running back at Oregon State. He was my financial advisor now, actually, and just he was like a kind of a big brother figure in my life. And, I talked to him a little bit, and he really helped me out to get through it because, again, growing up, you're known as, in my case, Marcus Greaves, a really good football player. So after you take away that really good football player, you're just Marcus Greaves. So then you're like, okay, well, who am I now? So uh, it was tough, Gina. It really was. But, you know, you get through the things and you obviously fight the battles. And eventually I won them. It took a while, but I got over it. And now I can watch football again because for the first couple months I didn't want to hear anything about football. But now we're good. Now I can watch it and enjoy it, obviously, as part of my job. But yeah, it was tough. But again, my career, if I can go back, I don't think I would change anything about it because I think it was all for a good reason. It gave me kind of light of what was important, of not just of myself as a person, but just in general of what I can do, even when things don't go my way. So again, I wouldn't change anything, but yeah, the career at Oregon State I had, I still love it. I loved every moment of it, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
Well, and that's, it's just kind of a good reminder to not ever take anything for granted.
Oh, absolutely.
Because things can happen in the blink of an eye. Like you said, you did the same move that you've done a million times, and it just takes that one. So, I'm really big about enjoying every moment because you just don't know. And so, I like that you wouldn't change anything, as bad as it was and as hard as it was to deal with. I'm sure you're a lot stronger because of that, because you can get over some pretty hard stuff that you've had to deal with.
Yeah, it took a little bit, but yeah, now I'm feeling good about it. Now now I can tell that story a million times and not be upset. But back in the day, I did not want to talk about it. But now we're good. Now now I'm an old man, so I don't got to worry about football anymore.
So now you give back, really. You do camps. I saw that you would go back to Prineville and do football camps. I know that you're helping at one here on November 1st. So what is that like for you to be able to really give back to the youth and, help teach them the game of football?
Yeah. So again, if I can't play it and I can't enjoy it in that instance, I want other people to enjoy it. And football is something, again, it shaped me so much of who I am and what I can accomplish. And I want kids to kind of go through the same thing of, man, you can do whatever you want. If you want to go play Division I football, and that's, a lot of these high school kids, young kids, that's what you want to do. You want to run out of the tunnel with 70,000 people screaming your name. You can do that by all means. You just have to work for it. And so Gina, you already said it, but something that I preach them as well is that never take it for granted. The practices suck. And trust me, I am one to 100% understand that sometimes you just don't want to go practice, and that is okay. But you have to do it because in the end, it's going to help you. It's going to make you. It's going to push you forward and make you a better person. And again, you don't want to take it for granted because again, you just never know when it's going to be taken away. And so, I love giving back. I love spending time with kids, coaching them, telling them, why football is so great, why they can learn so much from it. I mean, there's so many life lessons that you can learn in football, whether it be a comeback win or like a overtime loss, whatever it is. There's so much you can take away from the game, and just seeing the kids have fun. It's like I remember when I went to my first couple of football camps, and I was the guy with the tall socks and the headband, and I was dressing like a fool, but I did it because I loved it, right? And I thought it was cool, and it's just like spending the time with them and seeing how much joy it brings them. Like that's kind of the stuff, and especially being in a position now where you can give back, you always should give back, and that's kind of something I try and live by. Is that you're never too big for anybody else. By all means, I'm about as far from big time as it gets, but I want to make sure that I reiterate that point of you're never too big time. You see a lot of NFL guys, other college guys come back, spend time with the kids and teach them life lessons, talk about football, talk about what it means to be a college football player, an NFL football player. And as much as we don't think maybe at the time that they're listening or they take that into consideration, I look back when I was, when guys would come talk to me, even when I was a middle schooler, right? And I'd have a senior running back, come talk to us. I was like, oh, this guy's like big time. This guy's like a celebrity here. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, I know that feeling and I want them to experience that because it's something that'll stick with you forever. Now, when you go back and you look at it and maybe in 10, 15 years, these kids are going to look back and be like, man, I remember when Marcus came and talked to us. I'm going to be old man in 15 years with like gray hair, but but if they thought I was cool back then, and I'm solid. So just in general though, give it back to them. It's super important. I always love it. I'll always do it. That was kind of a promise I made to myself that no matter what, I'm always going to give back to the youth because again, they're the next generation. So anytime I can, give them some free game and free knowledge, I'll always do it.
Well, and I think that's for the youth as well, is to really be able to give them, it's so much more than football. It's so you can mentor them and teach them how to be a man, and what that means. And so I think that's so important to have people like you to go and do that. You've been through a lot, so you have that experience, and it's easily relatable for them. Oh, this guy played and he had to battle some injuries. So, I think that's great that there are people like you out there that do give back to the youth. So I think that's awesome. Now, let's talk about what you're doing now.
Oh, yeah.
So you are a sports reporter and analyst for Koin 6 News. Talk to me a little bit about that and how that transition kind of was, from being a player, now you're covering games and you're interviewing athletes. What's that like for you?
It's honestly, if you asked me, Marcus, what else could you do for work? I probably couldn't give you an answer just because how much I enjoy my job, how much I love it. I mean, Koin has been so good to me just in general with, again, once you're done playing football, you're kind of like, I don't know what to do. I got a couple degrees and a minor, but like even then looking back, I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. And so that's where, like I was saying, when I went and talked to Evanson Bernard, and I was like, hey, Ev, like, I don't really know what to do now, man. Like, is there something like, can you give me some advice? Long story short, when he worked at NBC Sports, he was like, just come up with me, see if it's maybe something you'd want to do. He did some analyst work up there. So, I would drive over to his place. He at 5 o'clock in the morning. We would take off, go up to NBC Sports here in Portland when I lived in Corvallis, and we did that for a couple months. And eventually, I was like, man, it's exactly what I want to do. Ended up moving up to Portland because that was kind of like what I wanted to do. I was like, there's that's sports. It's fun. It's exactly the things that I feel like I should be doing, and something I think I could do in the long run. And in broadcasting, it's not, it is definitely not an easy road. Same thing for football. And again, I think that's football helped me kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel because broadcasting is not, it's not you go from point A to point B, you go from point A to point 1A to 2A to 3A. So, I started off just doing some stuff with Angie Machado and Beaver Blitz while I was interning at NBC Sports. On top of that, I had another part-time job as a front desk guy at 24 Hour Fitness. And then on top of that, I was also another intern at 1080 The Fan Sports Radio here in Portland. So again, and that was just to make ends meet. And I was barely making ends meet. I was still eating top ramen and pancakes every day. So just see how it played out and again, worked there for a little bit and grinded my way up. And TV is an extremely hard job to get in. Usually what you have to do is go from you go to like a 125 market. So that's a Eugene. That's maybe a small town in Arkansas or, in North Dakota, something like that, where you go to a TV station that, doesn't get a lot of coverage, not a lot of people watch it. And then you just, you practice, you work your way up. But a spot opened up here at Koin 6 News in Portland. And I was like, man, that's exactly what I could do. A digital sports reporter, analyst, former player. I was like, man, I might as well shoot my shot and try and get it, And so it ended up working out perfectly. I went through the whole interview process and they ended up choosing me. And it's still unreal to this day. Like I probably could not give you one time. And I'm not just saying this because we're live or we're, it's recorded or everyone else can see it. To this day, I have yet to find a day where I wake up and I say I do not want to go to the job. So to put it in perspective, I know a lot of people do not feel like that about their job. So I'm extremely grateful that when I do wake up, I'm like, man, I get to go to the studio today and I get to go talk about sports, football, basketball, baseball, doesn't matter, volleyball. I get to go interview guys, Damian Lillard, anyone to LeBron James, so like those are the kind of things where I'm like, not everyone gets this kind of position, so I have to take advantage of it, and I have, can't take it for granted, like we were talking earlier. But it's a great job. I love what I do, and this is just a career path that I was blessed enough to get, and I'm going to keep running with it until people are tired of listening to me talk about sports.
So would you say that that's your dream job then? Because that's one of my
Yes,
questions: is what's your dream job?
100%. There is not one other job that I would rather do than this. This is 100% my dream job, which again, almost nobody finds that. So when you do find that, for anybody listening, take 100% full advantage of it. I will never, ever, ever take this for granted because there's nothing else I would rather do other than this.
So you've kind of said, some of the athletes that you get to interview. So as a sports reporter, is there an athlete? Okay, so we'll talk about the one that you told me earlier, but is there one that you haven't interviewed yet that you would love to?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Probably, golly, that's a tough one. Man, I got to think of all of them. I would say someone like a Odell Beckham is, I think, someone I'd like to interview, just because he's a lot of personality. I like guys that are true to themselves, and as much as everyone wants to be, you have a certain image in front of the cameras or whatever it is. People always call us the media, which now I'm, I guess, part of that. But but just in general, to interview him would be awesome. I would love to see like how he is, and how excited he is and how competitive he is, because again, everyone wants to win. So when he gets mad, a couple of years ago, when he was throwing his helmet and screaming on the sideline, like that's the kind of stuff I was like, man. To everyone else, that's like him losing his temper. To me, I was like, this guy just wants to win. So to sit down and talk with him and be like, hey man, your mentality, talk about that. I will say another player, obviously the late great Kobe Bryant, was somebody I was like really looking forward to eventually, hopefully sometime down the road meeting. Obviously, the tragic news with him and his daughter and those others that lost their lives is super sad. I was heartbroken. Again, Kobe Bryant has kind of been a guy for me that I love to watch. I loved his mentality. I watched his videos every single day before I'd work out, but he would probably be another guy. And then we already talked about one a little bit, but you already know where we're going.
Yeah. So I want to hear this story. I want others to hear this story.
Yeah.
Who did you get to interview, and how did that go?
So put this in perspective. I have every single one of his jerseys. I'm not sure if that's a good thing to say because I work in the Portland market, and he plays for the Lakers. But you got to interview LeBron James again. LeBron and Kobe, always guys that I loved. It was too hard for me to choose one growing up. I know everyone was like, you have to choose one. I was like, I just can't. There's things about both of them that I love. But it was when the Lakers came to town, played the Blazers early in December, I want to say, and after the game, Lakers ended up winning that one. I got to the locker room super early just to, interview LeBron, AD, get these guys' opinions and stuff like that about the game. And so, wow, it was crazy because the first time seeing LeBron, I was like, that's LeBron. I never saw him in person either. So he looked like he was, like a movie, or he looked like he was fake, just because of when you see him, you're like, that's actually LeBron. So, and I've seen and I've talked to a ton of athletes. I got to be at Dwayne Wade's last game in Portland and interview him and things like that. And I mean, it was really cool. Don't get me wrong, but there's something about LeBron and kind of who he is, and top 3 basketball player of all time. And so I'm sitting outside, and they call people in the locker room. All right, you can go interview the guys. I had 2 questions, excuse me, ready in my head. I was like, here's my first question. Here's my second question. That's it. Be professional. I was talking to myself before. I was like, all right, man, don't be a fanboy. Like, you're a professional now. It's okay. Like, just ask them a question, get it in, get it done. Give yourself a pat on the back because you're in this moment interviewing LeBron, and then you'll be good. So he was like, everyone got up to LeBron. There's only a handful of people because we got there really early. Me and there was maybe 3 other media people. I'm sitting there and I'm waiting, and then he stands up, and I was like, first of all, when he stood up, I was like, ooh. I was like, man, this guy's huge. But he's like, all right, he looked at me. He's like, all right, he's like, like, what's your question? And I was like, I was like, man, I went completely blank, forgot everything, my whole script. I threw it out the window. I was like, LeBron, I'm a huge fan. I love what you do, man. Like, I'm your biggest fan, man. I watch your stuff. I got every single one. Just start going off. He just laughed, and I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, that was not professional. Like, but I had to go off for a couple seconds, and And it was funny. A lot of the media guys started laughing because they knew I was new to the job and like just being in that position. He laughed too. He was like, "Man, I appreciate it. Like, you don't have to apologize. You know, it happened." And he was just like, uh, he laughed a little bit. He was like giggling. He was like, "Man, you're all good, man. Like, don't worry about it." And so that was probably to this day, it's probably my favorite moment so far. Just like, I got to sit down and kind of laugh a little bit with LeBron, and I did have a fanboy moment, which I didn't think would happen, but it did. So, so now I got past that. Now we're trying to be a little more professional. But that was probably
So
my
now
favorite person I've interviewed.
now you can interview anybody.
Oh yeah,
See,
now that was fun.
LeBron, so
I haven't been starstruck since, so that was pretty easy.
you got it done and over with. And
Yeah, I just had to get out. I had to do one. I just had to get one out where it was a little rough, but after that, we're good.
Okay, so my last question.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best advice that you could give to others that kind of might be dealing with things that you've had to deal with as far as the situation with your injury that's really out of your control? What advice do you have to people that are either experiencing that or might experience that or have and are?
Yeah. So I said it a little bit, and it's all about, for me, it was about the mentality and the mindset. So when bad things happen to people, there's two ways you can look at it. And the first one, um, it's kind of a tale of two stories with the first ACL and then the second one. So the second one, I was in this mentality of, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Instead of what I had in the first one, where I was like, okay, what is this trying to teach me? So I would say my best advice I can give for anybody who might be struggling or who experiencing hard times, whether that be in sports or out of sports in real life, I think you have to take a step back and say, okay, this isn't why is this happening to me? What is Instead, you got to look at it and say, what is this trying to teach me? Because once I changed my mentality to that, and again, it's a lot easier said than done, but if you can do it, that's where you kind of find that growth as a person. Like I said, I couldn't even look at a football for 6 months because I was like, why did this happen to me? I did nothing but give all my love and my effort, everything to the game. But you have to realize, football is going to be a game that you can love as much as you want, but it'll never love you back. So those are the kind of things where, okay, then if it's not going to love you back, then why sit there and dwell on the fact of what happened to you and look at it as, you're a victim. You should look at it like, okay, well, what is this trying to teach me? And I think, like I was saying earlier, is what football taught me with the injury is, and how it just played out was like, listen, man, like regardless, like what you said, Gina, is never take it for granted, first of all, which I try and live by that every day. Obviously, some days are easier than others and some days are harder than others, but there's that. And then there's just, it showed me who I truly am. My back up against the wall. What am I going to do? Am I going to crumble, or am I going to fight back? Am I going to find a way to get out of a rut, whether that be emotionally, physically, or whatever? And that's why I want to say that's why I feel so good now. I feel like I don't think I've ever been happier, and that's saying a lot. When you find that mentality, it just changes the way you look at things. It makes everything so much easier for yourself, and everyone around you. Then you start bringing up everybody. Everyone's going to start looking at you like, okay, well, look at the way Marcus is looking at this. Or I try and give advice to my friends, or even people I don't really know who ask for that kind of advice. What did you do to get out of these hard times? And I just got to let them know, like, hey, man, you got to look at it like, why is it, not why is this happening to me, but what is this trying to teach me? Because eventually, once you find that, you'll always find a way to get better. You'll always find a way to get out of a rut, to get back physically, get back mentally, regardless of what it is. So my best advice is, again, just look at it. Don't look at yourself like the victim. And truly, if you are the victim, you'll find a way out. You'll find a way to get out, and you'll find a way, as long as you keep that mentality of, okay, what is this trying to teach me? And again, it's easier said than done. But if you can, train yourself, train your mind, train your body to get to that point, I mean, you can conquer and accomplish anything.
That's excellent advice. And I love the quote. It sort of fits, but it's, you either win or you learn, and so I love that because it's true. You learn from hardships, you learn from things that happen that are out of your control. And I think that's important for you to really, have that mindset. Okay, what did I learn from that? What can I take away? What can make me better and stronger? And so I think that's, I think that's great, definite mentality. Yes, easier said than done.
Yeah,
But,
definitely.
just if you can, like, if people can just remember that and get it through their head, it may not happen overnight, but you'll get there, just like you were you couldn't watch football for a while. And
Yeah.
so now you're covering it.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. And that's the thing. A lot of people still ask me to this day, like, how much do you miss football? And I'm at peace with it now. Like I said, I wouldn't change anything because I feel like the lesson I got out of it was a lot more important than going to the NFL. Because eventually I was going to hit the wall of football has to end. But what are you going to take away from it? So if you can take away a mentality that I feel like I got out of it, then I feel like I won that deal. As much as the 12 surgeries weren't easy, I feel like I won that battle.
Well, that's a great note to end on. So Marcus Greaves, thank you so much for being here. So if you're watching this, make sure to watch him on Koin 6 News, covering all sorts of different
everything.
sports, it sounds like, interviewing some amazing athletes. So make sure to watch that. Again, thank you so much for being here. And this is Gina Moore with More Than Sports. Thanks for watching.